The Stoic path: master yourself, master life. If you don't master yourself, life will master you. That is the truth many spend their years trying to ignore. The world today is filled with distractions designed to pull you away from your center, and it does so with great success. A notification pings, and suddenly you are anxious. A stranger insults you, and suddenly you are enraged. Fortune shifts, and suddenly your spirit collapses. If you are not the commander of your own soul, you become the servant of every fleeting circumstance. But here lies the paradox. We believe life's greatest battles are out there, in the marketplace, in the career, in relationships, in fortune. Yet the Stoics remind us, the greatest battlefield is within. If you do not first win the war inside yourself, every victory outside will eventually feel hollow, and every defeat will crush you more than it should. Look at the world with clear eyes. It is unpredictable. Fortune is fickle. People will betray, insult, or abandon you. Even your own body, once full of energy, will betray you in time. What then is left for you to rule? Only your mind, your judgments, your choices. And here is where the Stoic path begins, with the realization that self-mastery is not optional, but essential. The opening flame of Stoicism burns with this simple recognition. Your peace, your strength, your freedom, all depend on your ability to command yourself. No empire, no wealth, no honor can compensate for a soul in disarray. But a soul in harmony can endure poverty, disgrace, and hardship without breaking. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, could command legions, yet he spent his nights writing not about conquest, but about self-control. Epictetus, born a slave, could not command his own body, but his mind was more free than those who owned him. Seneca, counselor to emperors, wrote not about power's luxury, but about how little one needs to live with dignity. These men, so different in station, agreed on one truth: mastery of self is mastery of life. So, when I say to you, master yourself, I do not speak of rigid control as though you are a tyrant over your own heart. I speak of sovereignty, of calm authority, of knowing that no matter what storms rage around you, you remain unmoved, like a fortress of reason, a lighthouse in the darkness. Ask yourself now, how much of your suffering comes not from events, but from your reaction to them? How often has anger burned you more than the insult that sparked it? How often has fear paralyzed you when action was still possible? How often has desire promised happiness only to enslave you once it was fulfilled? The path of the Stoic is the path of clarity. To master yourself is to step back and see life as it truly is, not as your impulses paint it. It is to command your thoughts before they command you, to stand watch at the gates of your mind, for once you master yourself, the world loses its power to shake you. Then, and only then, can you begin to master life. What does it truly mean to master yourself? The answer lies in a distinction so simple, yet so easily forgotten. The difference between what is within your control and what is not. The Stoics taught that life is divided into two realms. The first realm is your own domain, your thoughts, your choices, your will. This is the citadel of your being, the seat of freedom. No one can invade it unless you open the gates. The second realm is everything else: the weather, the economy, the behavior of others, your reputation, even your health. These belong not to you, but to fortune. To confuse these realms is the root of human misery. Consider this carefully. You cannot command the wind, but you can adjust your sails. You cannot prevent someone from insulting you, but you can decide whether to be insulted. You cannot stop death from arriving, but you can live in such a way that when it comes, you greet it as an old friend rather than an enemy. Self-mastery means to keep your attention fixed on the first realm and to release the second from your grasp. It is to stop wasting life trying to rule what does not belong to you and to pour your strength into the only thing that truly does, your own character. The Stoics spoke often of virtue. For them, to live with virtue was to live in harmony with reason, to live in accordance with nature. And virtue was not a vague idea. It was clear, embodied in 4 guiding lights. Wisdom, the ability to see what is true, what is false, and what is indifferent. Courage, the strength to face pain, fear, and death with dignity. Justice, the resolve to treat others fairly, to live not for oneself alone, but for the common good. Temperance, the discipline to govern desires, to avoid excess, to live with balance. These 4 are the pillars of a well-governed soul. Without wisdom, you stumble in the dark. Without courage, you cower before challenges. Without justice, you corrode your relationships and society. Without temperance, you are consumed by your appetites. But with them, you are strong, stable, unshakable. To master yourself is to cultivate these virtues daily. It is to test your wisdom when life offers confusion, to prove your courage when life delivers fear, to enact justice when others tempt you to selfishness, to practice temperance when pleasures beckon you toward excess. Each choice is an opportunity to fortify the fortress within. And so, the Stoic path is not abstract philosophy. It is a training ground. Life itself is the arena, and each event, whether small or great, is a chance to practice. You cannot master yourself by reading alone, just as a soldier does not become strong by studying battle. You master yourself by living, by facing life's trials with vigilance, and by holding your soul accountable. The first step, then, is to see clearly what belongs to you and what does not. The second is to direct all your effort toward governing your own choices with virtue. For once you do, you are no longer a leaf blown about by the winds of fortune, but a rooted tree, unshaken by storms. This is the foundation of the Stoic path. To master yourself is to reclaim your freedom, to claim sovereignty over the only kingdom you can truly rule, your own mind. And from this foundation, you begin to rise, ready to face life not as a victim of chance, but as a master of yourself. The way you see the world shapes the way you live in it. Perception is not a passive act, it is an act of creation. 2 people may face the same storm, yet one curses the rain while the other sees the blessing it brings to the earth. Which one is stronger? Which one suffers less? The Stoics understood that much of human misery arises not from what happens, but from the way we interpret what happens. If your mind is clouded, even fortune will taste bitter. If your mind is clear, even hardship can be turned into fuel. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each day that the mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. This is not poetic wishful thinking. It is a practice. You take what arrives, and instead of recoiling, you ask, how can this be used? When someone insults you, it is a chance to practice patience. When plans collapse, it is a chance to practice flexibility. When fortune abandons you, it is a chance to remember that your soul's wealth does not depend on coins. Every event is clay in your hands. The question is whether you shape it or let it crush you. This is the discipline of perception, to train the eye of the soul to see rightly. When you see rightly, the world changes. Not because the world has changed, but because your vision no longer distorts it. The Stoic trains himself daily to distinguish between appearance and reality, between impression and truth. A harsh word is not truly harm unless you decide to accept it as such. Poverty is not truly misery unless you measure happiness in possessions. Illness is not truly the end of life's value unless you confuse the body for the soul. How do you sharpen this vision? By practice. When you feel anger rising, pause and ask, what exactly has been harmed? When you feel fear clutch your chest, ask, what am I afraid of losing? Was it truly mine to begin with? When envy burns, ask, what do I lack that virtue cannot supply? These questions strip away illusion. They bring you back to what is essential. Gratitude is another tool of perception. By deliberately noticing what is already good, you train the mind to stop chasing phantoms. Each morning, remind yourself, I woke today, I breathe, I think, I can act. These are riches greater than the gold emperors hoarded, because without them, gold is meaningless. Each evening, reflect. What trials did I face, and how did they serve me? The habit of gratitude turns burdens into blessings, for it teaches you that even hardship is a teacher. Look also at modern life. Stuck in traffic, many curse and fume, but the Stoic sees practice, an hour to exercise patience, to let go of haste. Insulted online by a stranger, many strike back with venom. But the Stoic sees practice, a chance to remember that the opinion of the ignorant is no true measure of worth. Passed over at work, many sink into resentment, but the Stoic sees practice, a reminder that ambition chained to external reward is slavery, while ambition toward virtue is freedom. The more you train perception, the less the world can wound you. Not because wounds do not come, but because your mind transforms them into instruments of strength. A clear eye sees opportunity where a clouded eye sees only suffering. And when your vision is clear, you walk through life not as a victim, but as a craftsman, shaping every circumstance into a tool for your growth. Yet vision alone is not enough. To see rightly is the first step, but if you do not act rightly, your insight becomes hollow. The Stoic path is not only about understanding, it is about living. Once your perception is disciplined, you must turn to the discipline of action. Action is where Stoicism breathes. Philosophy that stays on the page is dead. Philosophy that steps into the world becomes alive, becomes virtue. To live rightly is to act rightly, not once in a while, not only when convenient, but as a constant rule of life. The Stoic knows that life is not judged by thoughts alone, but by deeds. Every day the world presents you with choices. You can meet them with justice or with selfishness. You can meet them with courage or with fear. You can meet them with temperance or with indulgence. You can meet them with wisdom or with folly. These choices define your character far more than fortune ever could. Justice demands that you treat others as fellow travelers in this life, not as tools for your gain. It is easy to be just when others treat you kindly. The test comes when they do not. When wronged, the Stoic asks, what is within my control? I cannot command another's cruelty, but I can command my own fairness. I cannot erase injustice from the world, but I can refuse to add to it. Each act of justice, no matter how small, fortifies the soul. Courage is shown when fear would have you retreat. It is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to bow before it. A soldier stepping into battle, a parent speaking truth to protect a child, a citizen resisting corruption, all practice the discipline of courage. You need not fight wars to live bravely. Each time you endure criticism for speaking truth, each time you choose integrity over comfort, each time you take a step forward when fear whispers to stand still, you practice courage. Temperance is often neglected, but it is the guardian of the soul. Without temperance, Pleasures become poisons. The Stoic does not condemn pleasure, but he refuses to be enslaved by it. Food is for nourishment, not gluttony. Wealth is for use, not for worship. Desire is for life, not for chains. Each time you choose moderation over excess, you free yourself a little more. Each time you resist the call of indulgence, you strengthen the will. Wisdom guides them all. Without wisdom, courage becomes recklessness, justice becomes blind stubbornness, temperance becomes joyless austerity. Wisdom discerns when to speak and when to be silent, when to act and when to endure, when to push forward and when to wait. Wisdom is not a gift given at once, but a light built daily by reflection, study, and experience. To live with virtue in the world is to walk through daily life with these 4 lights burning. It is to greet each situation not with impulse, but with principle. In your family, it means patience, fairness, and love. In your work, it means integrity, diligence, and service. In your friendships, it means loyalty and honesty. In your struggles, it means endurance and clarity. The Stoic path is not a retreat into ivory towers, nor is it a withdrawal from society. It is a call to engage more fully, but with mastery. You act not because others push you, but because reason and virtue guide you. You live not as a slave to passions, but as their commander. You walk through the marketplace, the home, the battlefield, the Senate hall, not as one tossed by winds, but as one rooted in principles. To master your action is power, but power that cannot endure collapse is fragile. You may act well, but what if fate strikes with cruelty? What if your best efforts are crushed? Then the true test begins. For the discipline of action prepares you for the world, but the discipline of will prepares you for the blows of fortune. Life does not ask your permission before it delivers hardship. Illness arrives uninvited, fortunes vanish without warning, loved ones depart without goodbye. No amount of careful planning, no amount of wisdom in perception or action will prevent fate from striking. Here the Stoics teach the most difficult yet most liberating discipline of all, the discipline of will. The discipline of will is not about controlling what cannot be controlled, but about enduring it with dignity. It is the art of acceptance, the strength to bend without breaking, the resilience that turns tragedy into training. Fate deals the cards, but you decide how to play them. You cannot change the hand, but you can refuse to throw it down in despair. Amor fati, the love of fate, is the Stoic's shield. Not mere resignation, not bitter tolerance, but a radical embrace of life as it is given. To love fate is to say, whatever comes, I will use it. If joy, I will savor it with gratitude. If pain, I will use it to deepen my strength. If loss, I will let it remind me of the value of what remains. Nothing is wasted, for everything is material for the soul's training. Seneca wrote that adversity is the fire that tests gold. He knew that hardship reveals what is hidden. A smooth life produces fragile spirits. A difficult life produces souls of iron. The Stoic does not ask for an easy road, for an easy road does not build greatness. He asks only for the courage to walk the hard road without surrender. The practice of premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils, arms the will against surprise. Each day imagine what could happen: sickness, insult, loss, death. Not to drown in fear, but to prepare your mind. When fortune strikes, you are not caught unarmed. You have rehearsed the play. You greet the blow with calm, as an actor who knows his role. By imagining misfortune, you loosen its hold over you, and when it arrives, you recognize it not as an enemy, but as an expected guest. Modern life gives no shortage of tests. A sudden diagnosis and health crumbles. A company collapses and years of labor vanish. A relationship fractures and your heart is torn. In each case, you stand before a choice. Will you curse the world, or will you endure with grace? Will you be broken, or will you be tempered? The Stoic chooses to endure, not because he feels nothing, but because he knows that his worth is not destroyed by circumstances. He holds the line. With perception trained, with action disciplined, with will fortified, the Stoic begins to achieve mastery of the self. Yet there remains one enemy more subtle than misfortune, one opponent more intimate than fate. That enemy is the storm of emotion within. To master yourself, you must also master your emotions. Emotions are natural, but they are not sovereign. They rise like waves in the ocean of the soul, but it is your choice whether to drown in them or to ride them with control. Anger, fear, envy, grief, all arise unbidden, but consent is yours. The Stoics never taught that you must become stone. They taught that you must never become a slave. Anger burns fastest. A careless word, an insult, a betrayal, and suddenly fire surges. Many believe this fire gives strength, but in truth, it blinds. Anger is a weapon that wounds the hand that wields it more than the enemy it strikes. The Stoic pauses, takes distance, asks, what is really at stake? Often, nothing but pride. To master anger is to let the fire pass without setting your soul ablaze. Fear creeps quieter. It whispers of what may happen, what might be lost, what could go wrong. It freezes action, paralyzes the will. But fear is always about the future, and the future is never yours to control. Epictetus taught that death and hardship are not frightening, only the thought that they are. To master fear is to return to the present, to act with courage even as your heart trembles. For courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to obey it. Envy poisons slowly. It tells you others have what you lack, that you are diminished by their gain. But envy forgets that virtue is the only true good, and virtue cannot be stolen or outshone. The Stoic reminds himself that another's fortune does not diminish his own, just as the rising of one star does not dim the light of another. To master envy is to fix your gaze on what lies within your control, your own choices, your own character. Even grief, heavy as it is, can be faced with dignity. To lose what we love is to feel the deepest wound. The Stoics did not deny this pain. They acknowledged it, but they sought to guide it. Grief is the measure of love, but it must not destroy the one who remains. To remember mortality, to practice memento mori, is to know that nothing is promised forever. Loss will hurt, but it need not consume. To master grief is to let love remain without letting sorrow rule. How does one practice this mastery? By creating distance between impulse and assent. When an emotion rises, pause before acting. Ask, is this judgment true? Is this response worthy of me? Imagine your life written down. Would this choice honor you or shame you? In that pause lies freedom. That small space between feeling and action is where mastery is born. Epictetus, born in chains, endured cruelty without letting hatred consume him. Marcus Aurelius, burdened with empire, faced betrayal without collapsing into despair. They were human and they felt, but they refused to bow. Their example is proof that emotion need not rule you, that self-command is possible even under the heaviest weight. The strongest fortress is not of stone, but of self-command. When you can face insult without anger, fear without surrender, envy without bitterness, grief without ruin, then you are truly free. Your soul stands unshaken, and nothing the world throws at you can dethrone you. To master emotions is not to suppress life, but to rise above its storms and sail with steady hand. What is freedom? Many would say it is the power to do whatever one wishes, to chase every desire, to escape every restraint. But the Stoics saw more clearly. They saw that such a life, far from being free, is the worst form of slavery. For the man who cannot control himself is ruled by passions, and his masters are countless: greed, lust, anger, fear, vanity. He believes he is free, yet he is pulled this way and that, chained by cravings he cannot resist, enslaved by fears he cannot silence. True freedom, the Stoics teach, lies elsewhere. Freedom begins when you no longer need to beg fortune for happiness. When your peace depends on nothing outside your will, you are unshakable. A slave who masters himself is freer than a king who is mastered by passion. Epictetus, who was literally a slave, knew this deeply. Though he had no control over his body, over his chains, over the insults hurled at him, he still walked as a free man because his soul was his own. His choices were his own. His thoughts belonged only to him. Contrast that with those who appear free today. Many boast of independence, yet are chained to addictions. Some are enslaved by the approval of strangers, refreshing their devices to feed a hunger that never ends. Others are prisoners of wealth, working endlessly not to live, but to sustain an image. These are not free men, they are captives disguised as rulers. The Stoic understands that freedom is not found in the absence of limits, but in mastery of self within them. You may not control the length of your life, but you control the manner in which you live it. You may not command fortune, but you command your response. You may not silence every insult, but you can silence the sting. Each time you choose self-control over impulse, principle over passion, you tighten your grip on freedom. Temperance is a great liberator. When you are satisfied with little, no one can enslave you by withholding much. Courage frees you from the chains of fear. Justice frees you from the tyranny of selfishness. Wisdom frees you from the prison of ignorance. The more you cultivate virtue, the freer you become. Consider this. A man who needs nothing cannot be owned by anything. A woman who governs her desires cannot be manipulated by bribes or seductions. A soul content with itself cannot be broken by fortune. This is the Stoic vision of freedom, to live unenslaved, sovereign, in the only realm that truly belongs to you. But how do we know this path is possible? Because it has been lived. Not by distant myths, but by flesh and blood men who walked through fire and did not bend. Their examples shine across centuries like beacons, reminding us of what a human soul can endure and achieve. Marcus Aurelius, crowned with absolute power, lived daily under the burden of empire. He commanded armies, judged disputes, managed famine and plague. Yet in the quiet of his tent, he wrote not of conquest, but of humility, patience, and the fleeting nature of life. A man should stand erect, not be kept erect by others, he wrote. Though emperor of Rome, he sought first to be emperor of himself. His meditations were not intended for an audience, but for his own correction. He fought his battles not on parchment alone, but within his own soul. Seneca, surrounded by wealth and influence, understood its dangers. He lived in the halls of emperors, yet constantly reminded himself how little was truly necessary. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor, he declared. In his letters, he urged his friends to practice poverty in preparation for misfortune, to remind themselves that true riches lie in a content soul. Though he stood near the heart of power, he pointed always toward simplicity, toward a life ruled not by luxury, but by reason. Epictetus, once a slave, taught from a small, bare room after winning his freedom. He had no palaces, no armies, no wealth. Yet men of power came to him for guidance. Why? Because he had something they lacked: unshakable freedom. "You may fetter my leg," he told his master, "but not even Zeus himself can overpower my will." He knew that while his body could be struck, chained, or broken, his choices were invulnerable. That truth made him untouchable. Even Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, began in shipwreck. He lost everything in a single wave. Yet from that loss, he discovered philosophy, and with it, the teaching that would endure for centuries. What others would call ruin, he called fortune. "I made a prosperous voyage when I suffered shipwreck," he said, for it led him to wisdom. These figures lived in different worlds: a slave, a statesman, an emperor, a merchant turned philosopher. Yet their voices unite in harmony on one truth: self-mastery is the only true mastery. Their lives are proof that this path is not fantasy. It is not reserved for saints or sages. It is possible for any human willing to take up the discipline. And so we stand in their shadow, with their words still echoing. If Marcus could remain humble while ruling the greatest empire, if Seneca could seek simplicity in wealth, if Epictetus could claim freedom in chains, then what excuse do we have? If they could master themselves in their world, why not us in ours? Philosophy remains only words until it is lived. The Stoics did not intend their wisdom to gather dust in scrolls or to be admired from a distance. They designed it as a way of life, a daily discipline, a series of small practices that slowly reshape the soul. If you seek to walk the Stoic path, you must carry it into your mornings, your evenings, and every ordinary hour between. Begin the day with purpose. Before the noise of the world reaches you, before you open the door or the device, sit in silence. Ask yourself, what kind of person will I be today? What challenges may arise? How will I meet them with virtue? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning that he would meet men who are deceitful, arrogant, and selfish, but that he could not allow their faults to infect him. This is the morning armor of the Stoic: to expect difficulty and to resolve beforehand to meet it with reason. Throughout the day, practice mindfulness of choice. When anger begins to stir, pause and test it. When desire tempts you, measure it against temperance. When fear whispers, recall courage. You cannot control the rush of impressions, but you can control your assent to them. Each small decision is training. Each moment of discipline is another stone laid in the fortress of the soul. At night, reflect. Seneca advised examining the day as a judge examines a case. Ask yourself, what did I do well? Where did I fall short? Did I act with wisdom, courage, justice, temperance? Did I master myself, or was I mastered? This reflection is not for self-condemnation, but for correction. Each day provides material for growth. Each failure is an opportunity to practice humility and resolve. Negative visualization strengthens gratitude and resilience. Imagine losing what you love, your possessions, your health, even those closest to you. At first, the thought feels bitter, but it carries medicine. It reminds you to treasure what you have while it is here. It prepares you for loss when it comes, softening the shock. When fortune takes what she always takes, you will grieve, but you will not collapse. For you rehearsed the scene long before it played. Voluntary discomfort trains the will. Sleep on the floor for a night, fast from a meal, walk in the cold. Do this not to punish yourself, but to remind yourself how little is truly needed to live. Luxury weakens, but simplicity strengthens. When you learn to endure with little, fortune's threats lose their teeth. Poverty cannot terrify the one who has practiced living simply. Acts of justice and kindness keep the Stoic path from becoming self-centered. Philosophy is not only for personal peace, but for service to others. Each day, find a chance to help, to forgive, to uplift. The world will not always return the gesture, but the act itself strengthens your soul. These practices are not for scholars alone, but for warriors of life. The Stoic is not someone who sits apart, untouched by the world. The Stoic is someone who walks into the noise, the conflict, the uncertainty, and yet remains unbroken, because his inner practices anchor him. This is how philosophy becomes flesh, how mastery is forged in the fire of daily living. Yet even with all these practices, there remains one enemy that humbles every human, one boundary no will can cross: death. And it is here, in facing death, that the Stoic warrior finds the final and greatest form of mastery. To master life, you must first come to terms with death. For what is fear at its root? But the fear of losing what we love, of losing ourselves. The Stoics confronted this directly, without flinching. Memento mori, remember you must die, was not meant to depress, but to awaken. When you remember death, life sharpens into focus. You see clearly how precious each breath is, how foolish it is to waste time on trivial quarrels, empty desires, or the pursuit of what cannot endure. Death is not an evil, they said, but a law of nature. To rage against it is to rage against the tide. The leaf that falls in autumn is no less a part of nature than the bloom of spring. The Stoic seeks not to live forever, but to live rightly until the end. Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years, wrote Marcus Aurelius. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. When you accept death, fear loses its hold. What can the world do to the one who no longer clings desperately to life? He becomes untouchable, free to act with courage, free to speak truth, free to live without compromise. The tyrant's threats mean nothing if death itself is not feared. The loss of wealth, reputation, or comfort becomes small when compared to the inevitability of the grave. Acceptance of death strips life of illusion, leaving only what is real and urgent: virtue, love, presence. The Stoics saw death not as a thief, but as a teacher. It teaches you to value today, for tomorrow is not promised. It teaches you to value character, for possessions cannot cross the threshold of the grave. It teaches you to let go of resentment, for life is too short to waste on bitterness. It teaches you to love without delay, to act without procrastination, to live fully while you can. Consider the peace this brings, to live each day as if it were complete in itself, to meet death whenever it arrives without panic, to carry gratitude for each moment given. That is the highest freedom. The one who has mastered death has mastered life. For what else is there to fear once the final fear is gone? Thus the Stoic warrior lives with urgency, but not with haste, with joy, but not with attachment, with courage, but not with recklessness. He sees the horizon of death clearly, and instead of despairing, he uses it to ignite the fire of living well. Master yourself, and you are free. Accept death, and you are unstoppable. For the one who walks with memento mori in his heart walks without chains, fully alive until the very end. The path of Stoicism does not end with theory or even with practice. It ends in the way you live each moment, in the kind of person you become. You have seen how perception must be trained, how action must be guided, how will must endure. You have seen how freedom arises from self-mastery, how emotions can be governed, how death itself can be met with courage. Now all that remains is the question, will you walk this path? The world will not grow kinder. Fortune will not cease her games. People will not stop lying, envying, insulting, betraying. Pain, loss, and death will not vanish. But within you lies a choice greater than all of this, the choice to command yourself, to walk as one who cannot be shaken, who cannot be enslaved, who cannot be corrupted. This is the essence of the Stoic path. It is not about withdrawing from life, but about standing in its very center with strength. It is not about never feeling pain, but about never being ruled by it. It is not about escaping death, but about living in such a way that when death comes, you can look it in the eye without regret. You do not need to be an emperor to live as Marcus did. You do not need to be a statesman to live as Seneca did. You do not need to be a philosopher in a lecture hall to live as Epictetus did. You need only to wake each day and resolve to master yourself. The smallest acts, holding your tongue when anger rises, choosing patience when insulted, practicing gratitude when fortune seems cruel, these are the building blocks of greatness. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Do not wait until you are free of distraction, until life slows down, until you feel ready. Life will never slow down. Fate will never ask permission. You must begin now with what lies before you, with the very challenges pressing on you today. This moment is your training ground. This trial is your opportunity. Understand this. Self-mastery is not a single victory, but a lifelong battle. You will stumble, you will fall, but each time you rise again, you grow stronger. Each time you correct yourself, you draw closer to the unshakable peace the Stoics spoke of. Progress is the goal, not perfection. The path itself is the reward, for each step makes you freer than the last. So let this be your resolution, to live not as a victim of circumstance, but as a master of yourself. To let wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance guide your every act. To wake each day prepared for hardship, and to end each day grateful for the chance to have lived. To accept fate with love, to embrace death without fear, to walk through life with dignity that cannot be taken. Master yourself and you master life. The storms will still come, but you will stand unmoved. Fortune will still turn, but you will not be its slave. Death will still arrive, but you will meet it as a friend. This is the victory no empire can give, and no misfortune can take away. This is the freedom the Stoics left for us, the path they walked, the path you now see clearly before you. Do not merely admire it, walk it, live it. The Stoic path is not words, it is a way. And when you choose to walk it, you will discover the greatest mastery of all, to be sovereign of yourself and therefore free, no matter what the world may bring.